Native code, the holy grail of embedded development. You can unlock a microcontroller's potential with C and low-level software development kit or SDK. If you learn how to navigate in datasheets, a huge range of microcontrollers will be ready to serve you. But still today, Arduino and similar stuff are super popular. It's because native development is scary for newcomers. Or to be more precise, Eclipse is scary at first sight. Eclipse is an open source IDE just like VS Code, and some manufacturers build their development kit on Eclipse. The old and new Arduino IDE's popularity is coming from its simplicity. You select a board, write your code, click on upload and bam, it just works. I can't even compare it to Eclipse. The difference is night and day. It looks more like a plane cockpit. Just a ton of buttons and can't even figure out which one to push to start it. Eclipse is just like a plane. Looks complicated until you try it with a guide. So without further ado, let's have a practice flight with the STM32 Cube IDE. I'm Béla, the developer guy, and I will be your instructor in this series, where you will learn how to use Eclipse and STM32 microcontrollers. There is an official VS Code plugin, but last time I tried it, it was just plain terrible compared to the Cube IDE. So open our IDE. After some loading, our first dialog window pops up. What the hell is a workspace? Eclipse organizes projects into folders and adds some metadata to these folders. Practically that's workspace. You can have a separate workspace for each project or have all of them in one. I usually said don't ask again because you can easily change workspaces. Let's launch. After some loading, the IDE greets us. Yes, there are a ton of options and we will not explore all of them, just the necessary ones. As our first step, let's focus on creating a new project. We can either just click on the big blue Start New STM32 Project button or have a look. We have a Start New Project from STM32CubeMXFile.ioc button too. A lot of microcontroller configuration data is in this IOC file. It's really important for ST microcontrollers, but it's ST specific. A new project will create one, so don't bother making one. This welcome screen is not always shown, so let's learn the universal way. We can create a project by clicking File, New. Eclipse can handle a lot of project types, but we will need the new STM32 project. The target selector will pop up. We can select our microcontroller or dev board here. I highly recommend to buy a cheap dev board first, because ST boards are inexpensive and usually include an onboard debugger. So let's go to the board selector and find my dev board. We have a huge selection, so instead of scrolling, type the name STM32C0116DK. The board is there, so select it. And yes, it totally looks like my board, but there's more. Some description, images, and documentation. We can find datasheets and user manuals here. So after we selected our board, click Next. We have to name our project. I will be super creative and call it Hello World. But we have some other options. We can override the project location, but that's not recommended. It's usually good in the workspace. We can select our language, C or C++. I personally prefer to leave it on C and set to C++ if I am going to use its advanced features. We can also make a support library like a driver, but let's start with an executable, also known as a runnable standalone application. Last but not least, what kind of project we want, empty or STM32 Cube? Of course not empty, and click Next. Now we see our target, the dev board, and the firmware package. This is a support code made by the manufacturer. Usually select the latest version, but if something is buggy, you can downgrade to a specific version. We can also set if we want to copy necessary stuff or just link the support library to our project. I recommend to copy, because this way you can't easily corrupt the core packages and you can freely explore and tinker with everything. Did I say the IDE is sometimes buggy? It didn't want to create the project first, so I had to redo all the configuration, be prepared for stuff like this. But after finishing the project creation, a dialog pops up. Do I want to initialize all peripherals with their default mode? This only pops up with dev boards. I recommend to say yes, we will see why. Also, something perspective. Do I want to open it? Perspectives are a bunch of arranged windows, and we have one for configuration, one for coding, and one for debugging. I usually let it auto switch. But back to the default peripheral modes. Now you can see that almost every pin is green and has a label. They named each used pin with the function. Every pin can be configured to be a regular input, output, or something special, And this view is used for this, but we are only creating a project this time. Configuring comes later. Let's create a new project with the bare microcontroller too. I made a dev board with the STM32C011F6P6 microcontroller, but I haven't made a board support package for CubeID. If you find a custom board in the wild or eBay, the only thing you will know is the microcontroller type written on the top, and you will be forced to configure your project this way. So, filter for our selected microcontroller STM32C011F6P6, and there it is. Selecting it will give a slightly different view than before. A microcontroller description and other useful stuff. But this time we can finally get a somewhat decent datasheet. So click Next and name our project. Two projects in one workspace can't have the same name for obvious reasons, so call it Hello World Custom because it's for a custom board. The target device will be different this time since it's just a microcontroller, but the other settings are the same. The bug is also the same, I had to recreate it from scratch again. No, do you want to set the peripherals with default configuration dialog? Since there is no default configuration, we can and must customize everything. But that's where we stop today. Pin configuration and code generation will be in the next episode. Please like, share, subscribe if you want more content like this, and thanks to all my supporters. Please consider tipping on my Patreon or Ko-fi page. Thanks for viewing and see you in the next video.